She walked away, and the silence she left became your obsession. You've been sifting through the ashes of every conversation, desperately searching for the one mistake that would finally justify your punishment. She left, and your punishment was searching for a mistake that never existed. You have assigned yourself an unsolvable case, and every day you show up to the investigation, hoping to find the evidence that proves you deserved the pain. This relentless search, this obsessive need to find where you went wrong, it isn't a logical process. You tell yourself it's about clarity, about understanding, but you and I both know that's not the truth. It is a shame-based hustle for worthiness, a frantic, silent effort to earn back a value you were convinced you lost. You are not searching for an answer that will set you free. That's the story you tell yourself. You are searching for proof to confirm a verdict you passed on yourself long ago, that you are fundamentally flawed, unworthy of belonging. You look for a mistake in your actions, a clumsy text, a moment of neediness, a poorly timed confession, because it feels safer than confronting the terrifying belief that the mistake is you. The search is a distraction from this deeper, colder fear. It gives your pain a job, a purpose, keeps you busy. The moment she left, her silence didn't just create a void. It activated something dormant within you. The sudden abandonment triggered a deeper, more primal response, a pattern of self-abandonment that feels like an old, familiar reflex. In an instant, you disconnected from your own intrinsic worth. You dropped your own hand and began to attune your entire being to her absence, believing her departure held the secret key to your own value. Her silence became the mirror in which you searched for your reflection, forgetting that a silence is just an empty space. It reflects nothing back. It holds no answers, and yet you stare into it, day after day, waiting for it to show you your face, your flaw, your mistake. You are looking for answers in an echo, listening to a sound that has long since faded, hoping that this time, if you listen hard enough, you'll finally understand why you were left behind. But the only voice in that emptiness is your own, asking a question that was never meant to be answered. You have become the sole detective in a forgotten case. The crime scene is your own memory, cordoned off from the present, a place you return to every night. Here, you conduct an autopsy on a ghost, replaying every shared glance, every text message, every pause in conversation with the meticulous, desperate focus of a forensics expert. This is the mental loop of the abandoned, an obsessive re-examination of a past that is no longer alive, hoping to find a single microscopic cell of evidence that explains the death of the connection. You scroll back through months of messages, your thumb aching from the journey into yesterday. You read your own words with the cold scrutiny of a prosecutor, putting them on trial. Was this where I said too much? You ask the silence. Was this emoji wrong? Did the tone of this sentence, right here, push her away? Each memory is taken from the shelf, dusted for fingerprints that don't exist, and analyzed under a light of suspicion that burns only you. It's a familiar ritual. You isolate a single moment, a dinner, a walk, a phone call that seemed insignificant at the time, and you magnify it until it fills your entire mind. You dissect her words, her tone, the way she looked away for a fraction of a second. You convince yourself the clue is there, hidden in plain sight. It has to be, because the alternative is unbearable. This investigation is a full-time job, one that pays you in exhaustion and false hope. It's like being a detective at an empty crime scene. You keep dusting for fingerprints on surfaces no one ever touched, convinced the answer is there if you just look hard enough. You analyze the angle of the furniture and the temperature of the air, but you refuse to accept the truth. The room was always empty. The ghost you are dissecting left no trace, because its departure had nothing to do with the evidence you're trying to find. The case file grows thicker every day, filled with your own theories and suspicions, but the final page remains blank, and the silence she left is the only real evidence you have. The human mind cannot tolerate a vacuum, especially an emotional one. An unexplained pain is a form of chaos your psyche cannot endure, so it scrambles to restore order. When the investigation turns up nothing, when the ghost offers no confession, you begin to do the one thing that gives you a fragile sense of control. You manufacture a reason. Any reason. It feels safer, somehow, to believe, I did something wrong, than to accept the terrifying, random cruelty that someone can simply walk out of your life without cause, without a word. So you build a case against yourself, becoming both the prosecutor and the defendant. You offer up your own flaws as evidence. I was too needy. I wasn't interesting enough. I revealed my insecurities too soon. You construct these reasons not because they are true, but because they offer a fragile sense of order in the face of emotional anarchy. A reason, even a painful one, gives you a target. It makes the pain feel manageable, like a problem that can be solved, rather than a wound that just is. This is how you begin to build the cage. Bar by painstaking bar. Each mistake you invent, each flaw you assign to yourself, is another piece of the prison you will inhabit. The first bar is forged from the belief that you were too much. The second, from the idea that you weren't enough. Another is welded into place with the memory of a vulnerable moment you now see as weakness. You build these walls around yourself with meticulous care, and then you spend all your time, all your energy, searching for a key, never realizing you were the one who built the prison. You were the architect of your own confinement. You prefer the self-inflicted sentence of a cage you understand over the terrifying freedom of a world where things can end for no reason at all. The reason you create becomes a form of shelter. It's a dark and lonely shelter, but it protects you from the storm of meaninglessness. It's a pain you can hold on to, a pain with a name. And sometimes, a familiar pain feels safer than no explanation at all. This pain feels new, acute, specifically hers. You've mapped its geography entirely around her absence. But her departure didn't create a new wound. It simply pressed down, hard, on a very old one. A bruise deep in the soul that has never fully healed. The silence she left you with feels familiar, doesn't it? It's an echo. It is the same silence that has been a quiet companion throughout your life. Her silence today is not a new sound. It awakens an older silence, from a time and place where your value was first made conditional, where you first learned that love could be withdrawn without explanation. This is the silence of emotional neglect, the silence that met you when you sought validation and found only empty air. It's a silence that taught you a brutal equation. When someone withdraws, it must be your fault. Think back. It's the same feeling as a child who tidied their room to perfection, lining up toys like little soldiers, and then waited all afternoon for a parent to notice, to offer a single word of approval. But they never did. They walked in and they walked out, and the effort went unseen. In that quiet, crushing moment, a belief was forged in the heart of that child. My efforts are invisible. Therefore, I am invisible. The silence that followed made the child believe the effort was the mistake, and by extension, so were they. Her silence now is not just her silence. It is the echo of every time you were left feeling unseen, every time your love was met with indifference. It resonates with that old frequency of hurt, confirming a story you learned long ago. You perform, you offer, you wait, and if you are met with silence, you have failed the test. You were trained to see their withdrawal not as their action, but as your consequence. And so you stand here again, a child in an adult's body, staring into an empty room, convinced you did something wrong to deserve it. Here lies the central, cruel paradox of your search. You believe, with every fiber of your being, that finding a concrete mistake will bring you closure. You pray for it on sleepless nights. A single, identifiable error. Ah, there it is. You imagine yourself saying, "That's what I did wrong." A moment of relief, an answer. But this discovery would not bring the peace you crave. It would be the final nail in the coffin of your self-worth. It would become the singular proof your inner critic has been waiting for its entire life. That closure would be the validation of your deepest, most terrifying belief: that you are, in fact, broken, defective, deserving of being left. The mistake wouldn't just explain her departure, it would justify it. And in that justification, you would lose the last shred of hope that you were worthy of being treated differently. The wound wouldn't close. It would be proven to have been deserved all along. This desperate search for a flaw is like hoping for a bad medical diagnosis just to have a name for an amorphous pain. For weeks, you felt a vague, unsettling ache, and the not knowing is a special kind of torture. So you go from doctor to doctor, hoping for a label, any label. You start to wish for a name, even a frightening one, because a named thing can be understood. Then the doctor sits you down, his expression serious, and he confirms your worst fear. He gives the pain a name. In that moment, there is a flicker of relief. I wasn't crazy. But it is immediately swallowed by a tidal wave of terror. The certainty is infinitely more terrifying than the not knowing ever was. The pain is now real, official, documented. Finding the mistake you're looking for would be the same. It wouldn't bring you closure. It would simply give your shame a name, a date, and a file number. It would turn your fear into a fact, and that is a pain from which there is almost no recovery. You have been operating under a false premise, a foundational error in your investigation. You believe her departure was a verdict passed on your worth, a judgment, that you stood trial and she was the judge who found you guilty and handed down the sentence of her absence. But what if it was never a trial to begin with? Her leaving was never a verdict. It was a direction. Her action was not a statement about you. It was a statement about her. It was a reflection of her own path, her own needs, her own fears, or her own limitations, a reality completely separate from you. You have been treating her action like a reflection in a mirror, contorting your own face to understand what it says about you. But it was never a mirror. It was a map of her own private territory, and she was simply moving toward a different destination on it. A destination that had nothing to do with you. Imagine you are standing on the shore of an island you have carefully tended. You see a ship on the horizon, one you have watched for a long time, admiring its sails and the way it sits on the water. For a while, it sails parallel to your shore, and you feel a connection to it. Then, one day, it turns and disappears over the horizon. You immediately assume it vanished because it found your island lacking. It judged your shores, your trees, your quiet coves, and found them wanting. You begin to catalog the island's flaws. The rocks are too sharp. The sand isn't white enough. The forest is too dense. You torture yourself with these invented inadequacies. But the ship was just following its own course. It was guided by its own stars, its own compass, and its own currents, navigating a map you have never seen. It may have been completely unaware of the elaborate story of judgment you were telling yourself back on the shore. Her direction was never a verdict on your island. It was just a ship, following its own way home. The ship has sailed. The island is quiet. You understand on a logical level that her departure was about her own journey. But logic has no jurisdiction here. The mistake you are searching for has become a phantom itch. The source of the irritation, the relationship, her presence, is gone. The limb has been amputated, but your brain, conditioned by the trauma of the loss and wired by the obsessive investigation, continues to send frantic signals of discomfort, compels you to scratch an emptiness. This is a neurological loop of unresolved tension, a problem that no longer exists in reality but remains intensely, painfully real in your mind. The search becomes an obsessive-compulsive ritual. The compulsion to ruminate, to check, to analyze is a way to soothe the phantom pain. But you know how it feels. Scratching only inflames the area, making the sensation more pronounced, drawing your attention back to the very spot you wish you could ignore. Your focus on the problem is what keeps the problem alive. This phantom itch is a constant, maddening companion. It's like the muscle memory of feeling for your wallet in a pocket that's been empty for hours. The familiar motion is automatic, a learned gesture of security, a subconscious check-in. You're not even aware you're doing it until your hand finds nothing but fabric. In that split second, the loss is fresh again. The panic, though small, is sharp. Your heart drops, just for a moment, as you are reminded of what is gone. This is what your mind does with her memory. It automatically reaches for a connection that is no longer there. It replays a conversation. It anticipates a message. It feels for a presence in the empty space beside you. Each time it finds nothing, the panic is fresh. The loss is re-experienced. You are scratching an itch that isn't there, and the relief you seek will never come from the scratching itself. It's a habit of the mind, a ghost in the machine, and it will keep running its program until you learn to simply let the itch be, without reaching to scratch it. Let's go deeper now. Let's be brutally honest, just for a moment, in the quiet of this space. This frantic search, this obsessive loop, it was never truly born of love for her. Not in its purest form. It was born from a primal terror of being invisible, of being discarded. The obsession wasn't about saving the connection. It was about fighting against the crushing, humiliating feeling of being erased. You weren't fighting for her. You were fighting against the narrative that you are disposable. Your ego, your very sense of self, cannot withstand the idea that someone could hold you so close, know you so intimately, and then discard you so easily, as if you meant nothing. The search for a mistake is a desperate attempt to find a reason, because a reason would mean it was about something you did, not something you fundamentally are. A mistake can be corrected. A flawed identity cannot. That is the terror you were running from. This feeling is one of the oldest and most painful we can experience. It's the profound, soul-level pain of being the favorite toy a child loved intensely for a week. He slept with you every night. He told you his secrets. Your seams were worn down by the constant affection. You were essential. And then one day a new, shinier toy arrived. Suddenly, you are left in the bottom of a dusty box, surrounded by other forgotten things. The child doesn't hate you. He doesn't even think of you. He has just moved on. And you are left in the darkness, trying to understand what, in your very fabric, made you so suddenly worthless. The frantic search you've been on is not about getting back in the child's arms. It is the desperate, maddening attempt to understand why you were put in the box. You weren't trying to fix a relationship that was broken. You were trying to prove to yourself and to the silent universe that you were not a thing to be used and then thrown away. This is the moment the investigation turns inward. This is the moment you stop looking at her, at the relationship, at the ghost in the machine, and you turn the light on yourself. The entire premise of your search has been wrong. The question was never, what did I do wrong to make her leave? The real, far more terrifying, and far more important question is this: why was I so ready to believe that I was the one at fault? Why was self-blame the default setting? Why did the narrative of your own inadequacy feel so familiar, so easy to slip into, like a well-worn coat? The search, if you follow it to its true conclusion, does not lead you to her reasons. Cannot. The search leads you, inevitably, to the origin of your own internalized shame. It leads you to the part of you that expects to be punished, the part that believes love is conditional and must be earned, and that its loss is always a penalty for your failure to be good enough, smart enough, or whole enough. You have been acting as an archaeologist, digging frantically for a lost artifact in the wrong country. For months, maybe years, you have been sifting through the dust and rubble of this one relationship, convinced that the key to understanding everything is buried here. You've mapped the ruins, cataloged every broken piece, every shard of a memory. But you are starting to realize, with a slow, dawning horror, that you've been digging in the wrong place entirely. The real discovery, the artifact that explains the entire dig, isn't in the ruins of what you had with her. It is hidden in the cracked foundation of your own self-worth, a foundation that was laid down long, long ago, in a place you have been afraid to excavate. The real investigation is not about her departure. It is about finding the part of you that learned to expect punishment, that learned to equate silence with condemnation, and that has been quietly waiting for this exact kind of pain to prove its oldest fears correct. Healing does not begin when you find the answer. It will never come. The letter will not arrive. The text will not be sent. The confession will not be whispered. Healing begins the moment you decide the question is no longer worth your time. It is the conscious, deliberate act of withdrawing your energy from a past that cannot be changed and closing a case file that was never meant to be solved by you. There is no final piece of evidence to find. There is no last-minute witness to call. There is only you, alone in a vast silent courtroom where you have been acting as the judge, the prosecutor, and the defendant in a trial with no jury. For months, perhaps years, you have been cross-examining yourself, presenting the same tired evidence over and over, pointing to your own flaws as Exhibit A, B, and C. You have been the one demanding a verdict, the one insisting on a sentence. But the courtroom has always been empty. The only person holding you there has been you. The liberation is not in a verdict of not guilty. That would still imply that the trial was valid. The liberation is in the mistrial. It's the moment you finally look around at the dusty, empty room, at the stacks of files filled with your own circular logic and self-recrimination, and you realize the profound absurdity of it all. Healing is the moment you finally put down the gavel, declare the case dismissed due to a fundamental lack of evidence, or better yet, due to the court's lack of jurisdiction over your own worth. And then you simply stand up. You push the chair back, and the sound echoes in the silence. You don't slam the door. You don't make a grand speech. You just walk out, leaving the files on the table, leaving the gavel where it lies, leaving the question behind you unanswered and finally, blessedly irrelevant. You step out into the light, and for the first time in a long time, you are not investigating the past. You are simply standing in the present. Your compulsive search for a mistake was a profound disconnection from yourself. It was a trauma response where you abandoned your own truth to make sense of an external pain. The punishment was never her leaving. That was just an event, a ship changing its course. The real punishment, the one you administered to yourself every single day, was your refusal to come home to yourself in the aftermath. It was the daily, grinding torture of the investigation you led against your own soul. The endless search was a way to avoid sitting in the terrifying silence of the unanswered question, a silence that you learned long ago to fill with your own perceived failures. The true path forward does not lie in an answer from her. It will never arrive. The true path lies in the courage to stand in the rubble of that unanswered question, surrounded by the silence, and still believe you are worthy. It is the brave, defiant, and quiet act of belonging to yourself first, especially when the world offers no explanation for its pain. The real victory is not finding the mistake you think you made. It's realizing your worth was never contingent on it in the first place. The case is closed not because you solved it, but because you finally realized you were never the one on trial. We put together a short guide to help you name the wounds that make you search for reasons. It's about taking the first breath after the verdict you gave yourself. It's free and it's honest. Link in the description. This wound of self-blame is not your identity, but unlearning the need for punishment that happens elsewhere. The conversation to put down the gavel for good starts on the other side.